And we will begin. Heather, I think you're up first. Is that correct?
I think that's Leslie, actually, but
Oh,
I'm
sorry.
happy to do it if she doesn't
Sorry,
want
Leslie.
to. Oh, no, that's me. I lied. It's me. My Post-it note says me, and I ignored it. Sorry, Leslie. I'm throwing you under the bus. I was just moving from minutes to training, so my brain is a little off. So
You're good.
all right. Welcome, everybody. I'm really sorry. As Leslie pointed out, we were asked by some units to talk about planning your event. And we realized that this is an issue because, unfortunately, we haven't really had many events to plan over the past almost 2 years now. And so if you are lucky enough to be able to start to go back in person, or you're starting to think about going back in person in the spring, we want to give you this information so that you will be ready to hit the ground running. So the first thing that we need to make sure everybody understands, and thank you for those of you who are turning your cameras on, so I'm not just talking into the void. It makes me so much happier to see smiling or confused faces. So the first thing is chain of command. And so when you're planning an event, it starts in committee. So the president appoints committee chairs, and those chairs go out and they get a committee. So if Erin appoints me as a committee chair, I'm not a committee of one. I go start talking to people. I grab Molly because she's smiling at me, and I grab Oana because she's got a really cool background and I want to join her PTA. And I say to them, okay, we are now a committee. We are going to go forward and do this work. But I, as the committee chair, am the one who brings the reports to the executive board. So everything that Molly and Oana and I talk about in our meetings, every vendor that we go talk to, all those things, I bring all that back to the executive board. The executive board is what debates and discusses all of those things. They take all of the best things that we came up with. They use their historical knowledge. Their principal is there. So in the executive board, the principal also says, you know what, as cool as that one thing sounds, that's not something the district is going to allow us to do. That's okay, Erin, I'm flexible. The executive board are the ones, after debate and discussion, they coalesce everything into a motion to take to the association. The association is the one that gets to approve all of this stuff that we're talking about. So while Molly and Oana and I are amazing and cool and our committee is the best, we don't get to make any decisions without the association's approval. So we have to, as a committee, wait until the association gives us the green light, they thumbs up it, they approve all those motions, those contracts, those things, and then we can go forth and carry out those things. As I said previously, your school principal is a part of this. We want to make sure, especially when we're having events on campus, I know it seems like it's something we haven't done for a really long time, but when we're having events on campus, we need to make sure the school principal is a part of things. They need to approve the actual event. They need to approve anything that we're sending out, whether it's a flyer, a parent square, a parent portal, or whatever it is you're using to communicate. They need to approve those things. And they're also going to be the one who helps you with all those district requirements. As we have found out, district requirements are changing and shifting and pivoting. So they're going to be on the cutting edge of all those things, and they're going to help make sure that we're dotting all of our I's and crossing all of our T's so that our event will be able to go off, hopefully without a hitch. The last thing I need to tell all those committee chairs out there is, don't forget to have things approved by your PTA president. So flyers, contracts, I know we're going to talk more about contracts in just a second, but anything that's going out, it can't just come from you, the committee. It has to go through your president. The president is the one who is making sure that everything is all in alignment and everything is all organized. So at this point, we're going to pop it over to Leslie, and we're going to talk more about getting ready for your event.
Okay, so once you have your assignment as a committee chair, let's say, you're going to start working on planning the actual event. If you go to the California State PTA website, which is capta.org, you can find sample event planning worksheets like the one that you see on this slide. You are not required to use this, but it is a sample and it's a place to start at least. So maybe talk it over with your PTA executive board and see if this is the kind of thing that works for everybody, and then you can go from there. This will help guide you through all of the things that you don't want to forget when you're planning your event. You want to select your date, your time, the place for the event. And like Heather said, all those things have to be okayed by the school and the school district before you can just willy-nilly start planning an event. Check with your executive board. Your treasurer in particular has the current budget. They can tell you how much you have budgeted for your event. That doesn't mean that you can go spend it all on Tuesday, but it tells you your top limit of what you would be able to spend. But you need to get approval as you go along. And we'll talk a little bit about that. Like Heather said, go out and find members to be on your committee. You don't want to be a committee of one. That's no fun for anybody. It's exhausting, it's stressful, and it's just not fun. So recruit your friends, recruit people from all different grade levels to contribute. So you have a diverse group in front of you that can kind of meet the needs of everybody in the school. Then you meet with your committee and you brainstorm. And this is always my favorite part of planning an event, because I always just like to do kind of the sky's the limit kind of brainstorming, and you can come up with some really creative and fun things to do. And then you can kind of pare it down and make it realistic. But sometimes you'll find just bouncing ideas off of one another, you can come up with some really creative things. Remember that although the president of the PTA might not attend every single committee meeting, they are technically a member of every committee meeting. That means that when you're planning committee meetings, you need to invite your president to all of your committee meetings. Chances are they will not attend all of them. There might be some committees they don't attend any of them, depending upon what they have going on, but they should be kept in the loop as you go. Once you get your committee together, assign some roles, just like we have secretaries for our executive board. It's a really good idea to assign somebody to be the secretary. Take notes, keep minutes so that you can refer back to them, and also so that you can save them to pass on to next year's committee so that they don't have to reinvent the wheel. They have a place to start. They can see vendors that maybe you checked out and decided against and why you decided against them, or vendors that you thought were excellent and that they might want to call again. Assign people to do the research for the food, the decor, or whatever the things are that are part of your event, so that one person isn't doing everything. Okay, Erin. While that research is happening, don't just stop communicating. Check in with those people, because sometimes you get somebody who says, oh yeah, I will research it, and then life happens and they can't do it, and they don't do it, and they forget to remind you that they couldn't do it. So you want to make sure that everybody's staying on top of the duties that they agreed to do. And if not, then you can reassign things, or you can jump in to help support. You want to set up some regular meetings, like say, okay, here's our first meeting, but we're going to meet back here in 10 days so that we can just check in and see where everybody's at. One thing that I like to do is to kind of plan backwards. So you know the date of your event, you know when your PTA meetings are, where you have to get your approvals, and you can work backwards from that so that you make sure everything that you have that needs approval is done before that PTA meeting for final approval, before you can actually hold the event. During this time, it's also important for the committee chair to attend executive board meetings. That's that person's opportunity to explain where the committee is at with their planning, and to get any approvals that are needed, especially with things like contracts, which we'll talk a little bit more about in a minute. Once the executive board is on board with your plan, then it can be taken to the association where you can get final approval. Remember that you cannot spend money, sign contracts, do any of those things until you have that approval. I can't stress that enough. You must have the approval before you actually do the firm planning. Erin.
Leslie, really quickly, before you hop out, I just thought of something that we probably should have added on here. So Leslie is totally right. Staying in communication with your committee is hugely important. And there are a lot of really great tools that you can use. Having everybody on a Google Doc where they're adding in the vendors that they're talking to, or where they are on certain things, you know, what are the pricings looking like for the balloon art or the DJs or the whatever. There are some really great free tools that you can all use to collaborate, which again help with that communication in between. Because if I look at it and I notice that Molly's thing that I put her in charge of, there's nothing in the Google Doc, I can always reach out to her and be like, hey, Molly, I'm just checking in to see how everything is going with figuring out the food for the event, what's going on. And then Molly will either say to me, oh my gosh, you're right, I totally forgot, I'm gonna hop on it now. Or, oh, I have all this stuff, I just haven't put it into the form yet. So this is where I am. I've talked to Mr. Pizza Man, Taco Guy, and what's another cool food? I don't know, sushi dude. And you know, this is what I'm finding out. So Joanna, I see your digital hand.
Yeah, I wanted to know, when you're saying like keep in touch with the committee, and who is you? Is that
That's the committee chair.
the committee chair? Okay.
Yes.
And then okay.
And the president, the unit president, is keeping in touch with the committee chair and just saying, how's it going? How's your committee doing? Are things on track for the spring carnival? So, you know, that's why we have all these different levels.
Okay.
So, and then Sarah, I also see your digital hand.
I just, maybe a question for everyone. What is everyone doing going forward? Like in the fall, we kind of knew that we were doing virtual events, but now we're hoping that maybe we're going to go back and do events on campus, but we might not have that approval in time to like get things to like general association meetings and stuff. So what do we do in that situation? I mean, let's say for
You might not
instance-
have school district approval. Is that what you're talking about?
No, we could get that approval, but like, let's say that we've talked about it in e-board and we have our thoughts to move forward. And I'm just going to say the dance. So we want to do our dance in March and we're working on it. We're trying to like get DJs and all this kind of stuff, but we don't actually know if we're going to be able to do it. So I don't want to bring it to like the association until it's closer to time to know that we're going to do it. But I don't want to wait too long. I mean,
Well,
I'm
I
not
think
sure if I'm making myself
you
clear,
totally
but-
make sense. I think what's, like Leslie said, the most important thing is the association has to approve it. So even if there's that slight chance that it's not going to go, you still need to take it to the association, because if the association doesn't approve it, guess what? It doesn't go, whether the district says or the county health or whoever. So
Okay.
I would take it to them and say, listen, we are hopeful that we will have our dance on March 16th. That is our hope. And so we are going to present to you the plan for the dance with these vendors, this plan for food and beverage, this plan for whatever. But just know that there is a chance we might have to pivot and either postpone it to later in the year or, you know, turn it to a virtual dance instead of an in-person one. But you need to take it to the association, because if they don't approve it, it's not going to be approved by insurance. I know I'm jumping the gun because these are all things that are coming up later, but you need to make sure that the association is on board before you go ahead and start planning.
That makes sense. Okay, thank you.
Okay, Erin, you can. Okay, now here's the part that everybody really loves to talk about. Before we start this part, I am going to preface everything that I'm about to say with, I am not an insurance expert. None of us here tonight are insurance experts as far as PTA insurance goes. So if you have an insurance question, your best bet is to reach out directly to AIM, which is the California State PTA insurance broker. They're the ones that know all the answers or can get you all of the answers. And Rachel, my handy dandy assistant, is currently putting contact information in the chat for you. You will see an email address and you'll see phone numbers. They are very, very good at responding. They will get back to you. They have people who are dedicated to nothing but PTA questions, California PTA questions. So when in doubt, reach out to them. And that's not the last time I'm going to say that. So
And they
Um,
speak
there you
Spanish.
have
So if your committee chair is a Spanish speaker, they have Spanish speakers. So don't let that get in your way.
So like I said, AIM is California State PTA's insurance broker. Every unit should have received via email a copy of your insurance certificate. If you have not received that, reach out to AIM. I don't have them, Aaron doesn't have them, AIM has them. So if you have not received it, I believe the president and treasurer, at least presidents, received them via email. If you have not, reach out to AIM and ask for it. There are some school districts that require you to keep a copy of that certificate on file with them. So that's where you can get that if you do not have it. And the newest one was very recently emailed out. So check for that. The insurance policy that you all paid for, yay, good job for getting your insurance payments in. That policy is designed to cover allowable PTA events. Now, what's allowed, what's not allowed? There is an insurance guide, which you can find on capta.org website. Look, Rachel, you are so on top of things. It just appeared in the chat. There's the link for it. The insurance guide will tell you what events are and aren't allowable. There are green, yellow, and red events. So if you are thinking of doing an event and you look it up and it's in the green section, that means you've got the go ahead as far as PTA is concerned. Insurance wise, you're good. If it's yellow, there's usually some extra piece of information that they're going to need from you. And it depends on the event, so I can't tell you what that piece of information will be, but it says it right there in the insurance guide. And if it's red, do not do it. Under any circumstances, do not do it. Now, here's the kicker. Some school districts allow things to happen on their campuses that might be in the red. If the school district allows it, you still can't do it because our insurance says you can't do it. The flip side of that is there are some things that could be in the green as far as PTA insurance goes, but your school district says no. If the school district says no, the answer is no. You cannot do it. Okay, so those are a couple of things to keep in mind as you're planning. So always, before you begin the planning process, check that insurance guide and make sure that you're in the green or the yellow and you provided the additional information that is needed. Again, if you have any doubts, call AIM. So part of the insurance policy requires that the vendors that you use have an insurance policy. And it gets a little bit complicated and it's all spelled out very well in the insurance guide. But basically, they're required to have workers' comp insurance if they have employees that are on site for it. They are required to have $1 million, at least $1 million in combined single limit general liability insurance. And there's also times when they have to have automobile liability insurance, like if you are providing transportation, but also food trucks, heads up. That's another one. They're required to have either 5 million or $1 million limit for auto insurance. Again, if you're in question, call AIM. Ask them, is this a good enough policy? They'll let you know if it is or isn't. Our insurance covers our PTA members and volunteers. It does not cover our vendors. So that's why you're required to make sure that the vendors have their own insurance policies. So they have to provide proof of insurance of those things that I mentioned, but they also need to have a certificate of insurance naming the California State PTA as a certificate holder. and additional insured using language provided by CAPTA. Again, that information is spelled out in more detail in the insurance guide. They have to have the additional insured endorsement, and they have to sign a hold harmless agreement. Notice that I say they have to sign a hold harmless agreement. You as a PTA do not sign a hold harmless agreement. That came up earlier in the year that I'm sure you saw Aaron's emails where we were saying, do not sign hold harmless agreements. California State PTA doesn't allow PTAs to sign hold harmless agreements. If you are presented with an agreement that looks anything like a hold harmless, if you think it might be a hold harmless, if it says the words hold harmless in it, it is. Call AIM, email AIM, attach the agreement. They will read it over. That's what Aaron and I were doing earlier in the year when school districts were sending out these agreements. We were passing all of that by AIM. So we aren't able to judge whether or not you can sign the hold harmless, but AIM is. So if you have a question about it, just send it to them and say, hey, a vendor gave me this. Do I need to sign this or should I not sign this? And then you can go back and try to negotiate with the vendor. So you need to provide the vendor with all of those requirements and get all of those items before the event. And when you have them in your hands, put them in a file somewhere safe on site and keep them. When you use a vendor, they will require you to sign a contract. Before you can sign the contract, you need to make sure that it is a vendor that your association approves. So you will take the information to the executive board meeting. You will explain, I want to use ABC vendor for this purpose at this cost. I have the contract here. Executive board, you can look at the contract. All contracts need to be signed by two people, one of whom must be the president, and the other one is an elected board member, according to California State PTA. When you sign a contract, you sign it this way. ABC PTA by Leslie Powell, president. The reason you do that is because I am not personally entering into the contract. The PTA is entering into the contract, but since the PTA isn't a person and can't sign it, I have to sign on behalf of the PTA. So you list the PTA name first because that is who is entering into the contract and by your name and your title. One of those two people must be the president. When you are signing these contracts and using vendors, you must get them approved, and they must be in your minutes. If they are not in your minutes and something happens, and sometimes things do happen, and you need to actually use the insurance that you've been paying for, the first thing AIM is going to do is say, let me see your minutes. And if it's not in the minutes, you aren't insured for it. So make sure that you're getting those things in the minutes. One other thing that I will mention, there is a list on capta.org at that site that Rachel put earlier of pre-approved vendors. It's not a huge list, but it is a list. There are some people on there, like Scholastic, for example, was one that jumped out at me that I know a lot of PTAs use. They're pre-approved. If they are on that pre-approval list, they have expiration dates. So you check the expiration date, make sure that they're still in the green area there as far as expiring. And if they're there, then you don't have to go through all of this process. If they're not on that list, you have to go through this whole process. If you see somebody whose expiration date is coming up, contact AIM and let them know and just say, is this going to renew or should we go ahead and get all of the other information anyway? Again, when in doubt, contact AIM. Questions? Contact AIM. You can ask us, but we're probably going to tell you, contact AIM, because we are not the authority on this at all. If you have an incident occur at an event, please do contact us and also contact AIM. And there's a simple procedure that you go through. We have used it. Some of our units have used it in the past, and it works seamlessly as long as you have followed all of these instructions and you have all of your I's dotted and T's crossed. One other thing that I will say as far as insurance goes, and I didn't see it in the presentation, there is also a participant waiver that is included that is a California State PTA document. It's on the website. All participants in all physical events, that's the way it's worded, must sign the waiver. You can reach out to us if you can't find that, or you can again contact AIM and they can give you a little bit more information about that, although that one is specific to California State PTA. Did I cover everything, ladies, or did I miss anything?
There were just 2 questions. Can someone provide an example of an event that might get a red mark? That was kind of answered by a couple of us in the chat. Mechanical bulls, you know, things where someone could easily get flung and injured, break an arm, a leg, a neck. So that's what we're talking about. We're talking about red. Primarily, it's things that have a high risk level of injury, dismemberment, death, and destruction. Okay, we don't want to do fireworks. Oh, that's a good one, Leslie. It's a really good one. I always said that for my final event, I was going to have fireworks, but I always got overturned on that. And then somebody asked the question, insurance, even for something as simple as a face painter at a carnival. And if you are going to pay a vendor, yes, they need to go through this process. They need to have insurance. They need to do, if we are paying a vendor, even Mr. Face Painter, but if the kindergarten parents are doing face painting at your spring carnival, and it's just a group of, you know, moms and dads who are doing it, they're all PTA members, then no, but we're not paying them to do that. They're just coming and hanging out as the kindergarten class because they're sponsoring the face painting area. So I'm
Just make
hoping
sure that they've signed the waiver. There's also a volunteer waiver
yes.
for those types of people to sign as well.
Yes, so hopefully, just in case not everyone can see the chat, that will answer those questions. All right, Madam President. I'm actually ready this time. Okay, so it gets to the day of your event. We're finally there. The thing that we've been waiting for through the whole pandemic. We're finally there. And this is important whether it's virtual or in person. You need to do your best to stay calm. I know you'll be excited. I know you'll be nervous, a lot of emotions, but just make sure that you are calm, excited, organized, ready to go. If it's an event where there are going to be tickets or you have a, you know, anything that requires money, food, you need to work with your president, your treasurer prior to the day of the event to get a cash box. Treasurers don't like it when you say to them the morning of the event, hey, I need $500. And Erin's looking at me because she was the treasurer when I was the president. And there might have been a time or two where we had to request a cash box at the last minute. But for a big event, you don't want to do that, right? It's going to be hard to get $500 in singles just like that. So make sure that you are working ahead of time if you are going to do anything with money. Also, if you're going to pay vendors that night, you need to partner with your treasurer to make sure that the president, the treasurer, the secretary, all those people have signed off on the appropriate paperwork so that that treasurer can have that check ready for you the night of. You need to remember that we're flexible. Not everything goes according to plan. And this is something we've been especially learning lately. Have a plan B. So if we're planning to have this thing outside on the yard and all of a sudden the wind picks up or it rains, because it never rains in Southern California, we need to figure out where are we going to pivot? Where are we going to put this event? Are we putting it in the MPR? Is there a covered hallway or walkway we can go to? Have some plan Bs in mind. This is where that community brainstorm comes in really handy because we look at all those other options. You need to make sure that you have places, and I talk about this a little bit later, for all of your volunteers to go. We don't want people just standing around. We actually want them assigned so that they feel like their time is being valued. But make sure that you are reaching out to everyone. Don't just ask the same 5 people you see in the Zoom box every week. Reach out to those new parents. Reach out to dads. Dads are great for moving stuff around. They love to help like with security and walking around or being the DJ. That was always my husband's thing. He was always the DJ Ron. Older siblings, they can be extraordinarily helpful, and sometimes they need service hours for honor society or other things. Grandparents, oh my gosh, grandparents are awesome. We have Pam right here in our Zoom box. Pam is like the PTA grandma. Whenever we talk about her in our house, she's just the PTA grandma. She is great because she loves to come. She helps with setup, with anything you need. Pam is there. Don't forget about the extended family as well. Like I said, we need to be clear with our volunteers. This is what time we need. Don't make everybody work the whole time if you can help it. And even you, don't be assigned to work the whole time. You have kids at that school who you are trying to enjoy this event with. So Sarah's nodding her head. She's been stuck behind a table before. She knows what it's like. Have someone tap you out so that you can go do a couple things with your kiddos, so that you can be in a few pictures, so that you can enjoy the event. Yes, you might get, a text message here or there like, hey, we don't know where to put the whatever. Answer those, but try to enjoy the event with your family as well. This one is really important for folks like me because sometimes I like it the way I like it. I told you to do it one way, and now, oh, look at Christy. She's going to do it slightly differently. Christy's good at that. Remember, if Christy's doing the job, it doesn't matter that she's not doing it the same way that I would do it. It just matters that it's getting done, right? She is getting those hot dogs made. It doesn't matter that it's not the way that I set up the station. She's moved the buns and the relish around or whatever, but people are getting fed, hot dogs are getting made, all is good. As the chair, either you or your president or someone else on your committee needs to make sure you're welcoming those vendors to your campus. Remember, we're very familiar with our campuses. They are not. So we need to have someone who's their point person who says, we're so glad that you're here. Here's where you're going to be setting up. There's nothing worse than a vendor showing up and the first person they see goes, I have no idea where you're supposed to be. We're glad you're here, but I don't know. The person with the map is missing. Make sure that we have enough people who know that the food trucks are over here and the face painters over there. And then again, we all know this. Say thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Moms, dads, grandmas, grandpas, your committee, the treasurer, the president, everybody who's giving of their time to be at this event. And also thank the families for coming too. We're so excited to see you here, Brenner family. Thank you so much for hanging out with us tonight. Or going up and saying, high-fiving Gavin because he's dancing on the dance floor. We want to make sure that we are creating that synergy of being welcoming, inclusive, happy that people are here. And believe you me, when we finally get to be back on campus in any kind of big way, we're all going to be really excited for it. So just don't forget to celebrate your successes. Thank folks for being there. All right. I think it's time to end our event, Erin. You and Charisse are coming in on cleanup here.
We are. Thank you. So just a couple things. Nothing is more frustrating than being that new chairperson in a position and not knowing how the event was done or having notes on it. So like Leslie said, those minutes that you would take, in your committee meetings, leave notes for the next chairperson. It's going to help them get started. Help them kind of have a starting place. So that's just important. It's just a nice, helpful reminder for the next person coming in. Plan your cleanup crew. A lot of times when you do your sign up geniuses or some other sign up to have your volunteers come in and help, you could do the last sign up volunteer position could be half the volunteer position and the cleanup crew. Dads are great for cleanup crews too, if they stick around. I know a lot of dads will be happy to just jump in and help. We've seen that in the past, but definitely plan to have people there to help you clean up. It's going to ease up what you have to do because you are not going to leave that campus or that event until it's cleaned up. That's just one of the things we're not going to do. So the more hands, the lighter the work. I know sometimes it's hard to get those volunteers, but I know that a lot of people will stick around. However, also have a plan to have a crew in place. But what we really want to talk about is the finances that come right
Yes.
after you have your event. How we handle money from an event is so important. We want to know who's handling money even during the event, know who you can trust. You should have somebody who's a PTA member handling money throughout the night. If they're at a booth or something, it should be a PTA member. You don't want people who are just, not part of your association handling money. Know who you can trust with the cash box. Just, have an idea of who your volunteers are. But at the end of your event, you will be immediately counting your money. You're not going to put it off to the side and count it the next day or when you come back. If it's like a weekend event, you're going to count the money at the end of the event, and I'll explain more in detail why that is so important. We all know that we never count money alone. We never count money by ourselves. It's a transparency. We want to protect ourselves. We want to protect our unit and the finances. We always count with somebody else. One counter always needs to be a board member. The other person should be at least a PTA member. My rule of thumb is always we had 2 people counting, and then the treasurer was the one receiving. So in total, there were 3 people counting. But PTA says a minimum of 2. Just like any other fiduciary responsibility, we never count with someone that's related to us. We don't go and count with our husbands or our children or somebody else that resides in the same house as we do. We count with somebody who's not related to us. Lose my train of thought. After that money is counted, if you have the ability to get that money into the bank immediately after your event, that is the best practice. Okay. Now I know that the event might be a nighttime event or it might be on the weekend. I have seen units do it in the past where they've set up a night drop with their bank, where the bank will give them a key to the night deposit box. It's planned in advance, but they had a big event with a lot of money coming in. They knew it was going to generate a lot of money. They didn't want to try and get back if it was off campus or even on campus. Didn't trust locking that up on the campus. So they made arrangements to make that night drop. They took someone else with them and made that drop then and there, and it was done. I know that's not ideal for everyone. And that's really the way we like to see it happen. But, we understand sometimes that can't happen. What needs to happen then is it needs to be locked in a PTA lockbox that is mounted to a wall, not something that somebody can walk away with. So not just a cash box, or it needs to go into the school safe if there's no other safe place to lock it. The reason why I say that you don't want to just put your money away and then count it when you come back is because you want to know that what you collected that night is what is going to be deposited later. So what I mean by that is you're going to sit down, you're going to count all that money. Say you can't get to the bank that night or right after that event, and you lock it in that safe. Somewhere in between, for God, whatever reason, you pull that money out and it's counted again and there's a discrepancy. Okay. We want to know that, everything's accounted for. So it's important to know what you have right then and there. And that's why we count with more than one person. We're not perfect. Sometimes we miscount. So we have that backup. When you're counting, whoever's counting that money is going to take a picture of their cash verification form, because that's what we use when we count our money, is we use a cash verification form. And if you are not familiar with what that form is, it is available on capta.org. You can also ask your treasurer for it. It is the form that we use anytime we count money. It is signed by all the people that counted for that. When you count and you're going to put it into a safe or lockbox, take a picture or a photocopy of that cash verification that you filled out and completed, because we have seen in really rare occasions, but it has happened, where you counted the money, you had it, you counted with somebody else, both of you agreed that this set amount was there, you signed it, you didn't take a copy of it, but you knew I counted $500, and later the treasurer deposits 475. Okay, now I'm not saying that the treasurer did something wrong. Sometimes things fall through the cracks for what, we don't know what happened. But by you making a copy, you can prove in that instance that this is what we counted when we received the money. So that's why that form is so important, and keeping a copy of that record of what you counted, it protects you and it protects what you counted. So those are two really important things. If you are waiting to take the money to the bank the next day, or as soon as you get to campus or get back to that lockbox, whatever the situation is, as a treasurer pulling it to receive it, you're going to count that money one more time. Again, it's been dropped. Now you want to double check that what was counted is actually there. You're going to count it with somebody else, at least in the room with you. Again, we don't want to count by ourselves. Verify that the money you are receiving is the money that was dropped into that box. And then you're going to go immediately to the bank. You're not going to go to the grocery store. You're not going to go home first. You are never, ever, ever taking money home. If for whatever reason you do those things and something happens to that deposit, you get robbed, the car catches on fire, the house catches on fire, something happens, insurance is not going to cover it. Okay, they will cover you going from school to the bank and nothing in between. They're not going to cover if you take it home. They're not going to cover if it's left in your car or it's sitting in your purse for a day. You need to take it directly to the bank. Okay, so these are all just to protect you guys. It's not, that we want to be sticklers on this, but it's a protection. It's a transparency. It's protecting yourselves and the PTA as a whole. I think that was everything I wanted to. Anything I missed, guys? I think that was the jux of it. Just making sure that you're that how much money is there when you leave, and keeping record of it. So.
Well, and I did put in the chat that some units have their money counting procedures as
That's
part
it.
of their standing rules.
Thank you.
And so
Yes, they
please
do.
make sure, I know that Christy is excited to hear me talk bylaws. Please make sure that you're checking your standing rules, because a lot of schools do have very specific money counting procedures that the association has already approved. So just double check that before your event.
And I would just add, from the eyes of the auditor, who is going to be looking at your receipts, your reimbursements, your cash verification forms, that again, you make sure you dot your I's and cross your T's. So you want to make sure that every expenditure that you've had for that event has been accounted for in the minutes of your e-board and approved by the association. You want to make sure that your bylaws, again, that all of the money handling procedures regarding counting money, regarding reimbursement, regarding reimbursement timelines. In some cases, you can't reimburse after so many days. So make sure that you are understanding that. And every receipt, it needs to be a complete receipt. It can't just be partial, like just the top half of a receipt. It needs to have the item, the date, the amount, and we really don't want to see anything else on it. So I know sometimes we go to the store and we get things for PTA and then we get things for home. Make them separate purchases in all cases if you can avoid it, and combine them in any way. And just make sure again that you have all the signatures that you need on your cash verification forms, that you have all the signatures that you need on your authorizations for payment, that your receipts are complete. Just really try and make sure that you have everything clean for the audit. And the sooner that you do these money handling and cash accounting procedures after the event, the better it will be, so that you have a clean audit trail.
That's right. Perfect. Are there any questions on anything that we discussed as we wrap up this mini training? And if something comes to you guys later, you are welcome to reach out to any of us. If there is nothing else, I am going to stop recording this so we can move on to the last portion of our meeting. So I'm going to stop recording right now.